Hey everybody out there, Jeff Holton here. Today we are going to do a little bit of a session with Alan from HYCU. A lot of you have been asking about the HYCU cloud platform and R-Graph. So I have partnered with Alan to kind of walk through the platform. So I'm going to turn it over to Alan. We're going to keep this very interactive, but Alan, I appreciate your time.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks. And yeah, I guess I'll just kind of cover two basic topics, and that is, first of all, what does HYCU do, and number two, why should you care? So let me bring the interface, and I'll answer the first one first, essentially. So HYCU is a data protection service for pretty much lots of different data sources. It can be on-prem. What we're going to be focusing on specifically is your cloud workloads and SaaS workloads. And essentially what we're going to be talking about is how Dell can help position the solution. So very briefly, very high level, HYCU is a SaaS data protection service. Essentially what you're going to do is connect to source environments, ingest data from someplace. Just as a side note here, if you come to our little module marketplace or our app store or whatever, you can see the 80 plus different SaaS services, cloud workloads, and things that can be enabled and subscribed to within HYCU to do that backup data. Second piece of information here is writing those backups to some location. So we can obviously support the three big clouds, but where you guys are going to be interested is the fact that we can write on-prem or like data domain appliances. We can do ECS, we can do DDVE, essentially, and that is what is going to take all that backup data from the customer's environments and all these different separate cloud and SaaS environments and be able to funnel them into some sort of Dell-owned storage as part of their data protection. Now,
so Alan, in that world, to keep me honest here,
sure.
If a customer was to back up Jira, I'm probably saying that wrong, or Adelision, they would be able to use the HYCU as the data mover and write that directly to data DDVEs. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
And the beautiful thing about that is that, first of all, so many of these SaaS providers, they don't provide any kind of data protection, and I'll kind of illustrate that here in a second. That you look at most of those contracts, the data protection aspect is on you. They'll make sure that your environment's accessible. They've got redundancy upon redundancy, but if somebody accidentally deletes a whole Jira project or something like that, and they went, oh crap, well that's on the customer to recover that, and that's where HYCU and Dell can come in and take that data.
Say it's a lot like, almost safe to say it's like everybody used to talk about the shared responsibility model with Microsoft with
Same
Office
thing.
365. It really kind of follows that across almost every SaaS provider.
100%. Okay. So that more or less is part of both answers. You know, what does HYCU do and why do you care? Well, because you can take your customer's SaaS data and write it to Dell storage that you get to make money on. So here's where, and that's basically our cloud platform. The key to getting into this world in the first place is identifying exactly what it is that customers have that needs to be protected. And that's where our graph, and that's a lot of R's in there, is going to come into place. So what is that? Essentially, it's a discovery tool. And this is something that customers can do for free. We can enable you guys to set this up and do it for free. You can have us come on and help you with this. But essentially, what you're going to do is come into Discover Services, have them essentially register their single sign-on provider. So if they're using Entra, Okta, there's going to be others we're going to be supporting shortly here too. And what that is going to do, you basically create a read-only type, either service principal or access key or you know whatever the particular provider requires. And what we do is we go and read all the app registrations that are associated with that single sign-on provider. And then we can actually populate this R-Graph tile. And if I expand this out, you kind of get a better idea of what this looks like. If I expand this out, so here's my HYCU environment now that I've just connected to my Entra and or Okta environment. And what you're going to get is this huge map, and it's just very busy here in the customer's world. And you can see very quickly that, you know, oh, hey, here's some Bamboo HR is using that single sign-on provider. Or I can come in here and say, look, here's Dropbox. Here's some Atlassian environments. And you'll notice that some of these applications, if you hover over them here, the three red X's on there essentially say that this particular SaaS vendor provides no ability for self-service restore. They also have no ability to automate any kind of backup process. You can't schedule anything. And thirdly, there's no way to take any of their data and essentially put it off-site somewhere so that it's outside of the Slack environment. But anyway, what this gives you,
let me ask you a quick question. So basically, you're doing this through a single sign-on, and those apps are basically registered. Is that a fair thing into that single sign-on environment? And then you guys are using APIs to discover this. Is that fair?
That's correct. We're essentially hitting Okta, or we'll hit Entra ID, or soon to be, things like Duo and Google IAM and AWS and those kinds of things, to read and say, okay, this organization is using this single sign-on provider, and my users are signing into these applications using
that. Okay. And then how are you able to get that information? Like you were showing is that basically publicly facing information that you get through all your discovery services about what Adelesion does versus Jira?
Yeah, and it's not publicly available, but that's where this key is going to come in. So if I look at this, somebody who's using Entra, for example, if I look at here, the customer will subscribe to the HYCU R-Cloud platform, which is free to do. And they can come into this Discover Services and simply enter the client ID, client secret, and tenant ID of their Entra ID environment. So you can get those security folks to essentially generate these keys, which they can set the permissions so that it's read-only, so we don't touch anything. But this is what gets us the connection into the Entra environment or into the Okta environment that allows us to read what applications are registered with that single sign-on provider in the customer's environment to generate this map.
How long does that map normally take to generate? I know this is pre-generated. How long does that normally take?
So it's pretty quick. The fewer the SaaS apps, obviously, the quicker. Sure. I think the longest I've taken is maybe 30, 45 minutes at most. Oh, wow. There are some API rate limits on some of those single sign-on providers so that we can't pound away on stuff, and so we do little batches here and there. And so it could take a little bit to populate, but it's not terribly long.
Great.
So this is a good way of identifying what needs to be protected. And from there, you can decide, do I want to go and subscribe to these modules? And if so, does that map show me data that I didn't either know? You'd be surprised how many customers we've run this on. They're like, we're an AWS shop. We have nothing else. And it's like, oh, what about this Google environment or this other, we've shown them stuff and they're like, I didn't even know that was there. They can make the determination that, okay, they didn't know it was there, but is there data in there that's important that they need to protect? And so that they can make that decision based on the information that HYCU is able to provide them through that R-Graph piece. And then, as I said at the beginning, it's just a matter of subscribing to the modules, enabling them, and start pointing them to storage.
So when you look at R-Graph, it's going to give them basically an overview. And potentially this could be something you talk about not just for the backup team, but the security team, right? Because your IT sec team's probably sitting there going, oh my gosh, we have all these things out there. Now, is there a way with R-Graph to be able to see what is and is not supported today within the HYCU platform? Or from a sales perspective, how would they kind of walk through that with their engineering team?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if I hovered over Slack, for example, you'll notice that it just says team communication platform. And there's all those things that they don't support. And if I come up to Atlassian, however, there's a separate section up there that shows protection. So if that protection section exists, that means that HYCU has compatibility for it.
Okay, great. So it's pretty easy for us to be able to understand as we go through that, to be able to say, okay, we can help you protect this. This is not there today. Okay.
Yep. The other thing is you can right click each one. So I can say add source to Atlassian, but if I click Slack, it's going to go, oh, there's no module for it. Can I request a module be written? And we can add that to, so if there's a need, customer says, yeah, I want this. We get all these requests. And so engineering and product management are able to prioritize what's kind of next in the timeline. So by doing that, you can also kind of suggest what's more important to you.
So in this environment, the customer goes through, let's say it's Entra ID. They go through the process, they create the keys, they go through that. We do a discovery, whether it takes 5 minutes or 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. They pull that in and they're thinking, oh my gosh, Jira is super important to us from a development standpoint. Why are we not backing this up? They're able to, from R-Graph, keep me honest, Alan, they're able from here, if they wanted to, they could really on the fly be able to create that protection if they wanted to.
Yep. Each of the modules that you enable and subscribe to will work full featured for 14 days. At that time, then they shut off. And so that if you need to get through a quoting process, you want to just try it out and see how it works. Those kinds of things. We can help them with that. So, yep.
And for our sales team, keep me honest, the benefit is, right, they're able to sell not only the HYCU piece, which is great, but also potentially licensing for DDVEs and or data domains. And all of these should be utilized in the DD Boost protocol, I believe, right? So there is going to be some efficiencies from a deduplication standpoint that customers won't see, even if they were to utilize native tools from the provider.
Absolutely correct. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, this has been absolutely helpful. I'm sure the sales team out there will enjoy it and have other questions. But anything else before we wrap up that you would like to add?
Other than keep your eyes open, because it's one of these things that we're cranking out stuff. I think there's, on average, we're releasing 2 modules every 6 weeks or something like that. And so this list of 80 SaaS apps and cloud workloads that we're supporting is kind of ever expanding. So just because it's not there today doesn't mean it won't be in a couple of months. But yep.
Absolutely. No, this has been helpful. We really appreciate it, Alan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.